My choreographer friends said I was essential, but my partner disrupted the legacy. So I walked, didn't perform, didn't show. They begged me to reconsider. Even the founder called, said, "You were like a son to me." I told him, "Then why didn't you protect me?" And hung up. I'd never missed one, not once in 13 years. Rain, injury, international travel, didn't matter. I always showed up for the founder's annual conservatory performance. It wasn't just a show. It was a ritual, a test of loyalty. Attendance meant you were still one of them, still core alumni, as they like to say. My name is Sean Adler. I'm 34. I live in Boston now, work as a choreographer full-time, but I trained at the Ellison Performing Arts Conservatory, the kind of place where ballet met discipline and tradition reigned louder than applause. This year's performance was different. This year was his final bow. The founder, Maestro Albin Ellison, was retiring. The marketing posters said so. Ellison's last curtain, scripted across flyers with his signature below it. I already had my suit picked out. Section D, row 2, just like always. I assumed Adam would come with me. Adam, my partner of 6 years. A composer, brilliant, chaotic, painfully sincere. He'd made waves lately in the avant-garde scene. His last orchestration opened in Berlin and closed in New York. It rattled windows, got him a standing ovation and a half-dozen critics calling him either the future or a fever dream. We met at a dance residency. He played piano between classes. I walked into the wrong room, stayed for the music. Of course I wanted him there. So a week before the show, I casually mentioned it during a planning meeting, nothing formal, just small talk. The committee was gathered in the rehearsal studio. The usual suspects, 3 old professors, a pair of young choreographers trying too hard, and Grace Lynn, the founder's protege, current program director, and self-appointed gatekeeper. So, I said lightly, flipping through notes, Adam's excited for this. He hasn't seen Ellison live. Should be a nice full circle moment. There was a pause. Grace didn't look up from her clipboard. She said. Yes, about that. She always said it like that, like bad news should sound polite. We're keeping the event limited to core alumni this year, she continued, just to protect the environment. You know how emotionally charged it'll be. Outsiders might shift the dynamic. I stared at her, confused. He's not performing, I said, just attending. Another committee member, someone I barely remembered from student days, chimed in with a smile too wide to be genuine. We want to preserve the continuity. It's about Ellison's legacy, not newer influences. Newer influences. I knew what they meant. Adam wasn't from our world. He didn't use the right forks. He didn't couch critique in compliments. He wrote music that snapped and screamed. He laughed too loudly at fundraisers. He wasn't safe. I nodded slowly, already feeling the heat rise in my throat. So what exactly are you saying? Grace finally met my eyes. We need this to be a closed circle, she said, gentle as a slap. But your presence is essential. You're one of us. One of us. As long as I left him out. I didn't say anything else. I gathered my papers. I smiled. I walked out. But inside, something had shifted. They hadn't said it outright, but they'd made it clear. Adam wasn't welcome, and I wasn't sure I wanted to belong to a place that saw him as a threat. I waited until the next day. I told myself to sleep on it, let the anger cool, but it didn't. If anything, it burned hotter by morning, spreading into the space between my ribs, making it hard to breathe. I showed up at the conservatory unannounced, which I knew would raise eyebrows, but I didn't care. I found Grace in Studio B, overseeing a tech run with the student ensemble. She didn't look surprised to see me, just irritated, like I'd interrupted her playlist. Do you have a minute? I asked. She nodded toward the hallway. 5. We stepped out into the corridor, the echo of violins bleeding through the walls. I folded my arms, trying to keep my voice calm. I need to understand, I said. Why is Adam such a problem? Grace didn't flinch. Sean, it's not personal. That's not an answer. She sighed. Not everyone is comfortable with the kind of work he does. This isn't about style. It's about tone. This is Maestro Ellison's farewell. It needs to reflect tradition. I stared at her. He's not planning to rewrite the score mid-performance. He's sitting in a seat, quietly. Grace looked away. There's more to it than that. I waited. Finally, she added. Some of the board expressed concern. This needs to be a clean night, a legacy moment. If your partner's presence causes distraction, that compromises the event. Distraction, legacy, clean. The words circled like buzzards. Then she said the thing that made it clear. We just can't have his aesthetic overshadowing what Maestro built. His presence changes the energy. That was it. Not about logistics. Not about tickets. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A line, drawn clearly across the floor. I felt something crack open in my chest. A slow, quiet rage that hummed beneath my skin. So I'm essential, I said carefully. But he's a complication. Grace didn't reply. I nodded. Got it. I walked straight to the main office and found the assistant handling attendance logistics. I asked them to take my name off the performance list. Wait, they said. Grace said you were a confirmed choreographer guest. You're listed to speak after intermission. Not anymore, I said. That afternoon, I went home. Adam was in the living room, surrounded by sheet music, headphones half on. He looked up and smiled. How did it go? I didn't answer right away. I just sat beside him, leaned into his shoulder. They don't want you there, I said eventually. Said you'd disrupt the vibe. Adam blinked. Seriously? Yeah. He didn't say anything for a long time, just rested his hand over mine. No pressure. No guilt. I won't go, he said softly. I shook my head. No, I won't either. That night, I sent one email. Short, direct. If my partner isn't welcome, neither am I. Best of luck with the performance. Then I turned off my phone and waited for the fallout. The first email came before sunrise. We hope you'll reconsider. Your voice has always been vital to our process. There's still time. It wasn't signed by anyone, just the committee. By noon, I'd received 3 more. One from Grace, one from the assistant director, and another from a board liaison I barely remembered from my student days. All said the same thing, cloaked in different layers of politeness. We understand emotions are running high. We value your contributions deeply. Please don't let a misunderstanding overshadow your legacy. That word again, legacy, like it was something sacred I was now soiling. By evening, the call started. I didn't answer. I let the voicemails pile up. Some were gentle, others, less so. You're making this political, someone said. This isn't a protest. It's a celebration, said another. Don't turn your back on everything we built, said the last one, and that voice I recognized. Ellison, my mentor, my teacher, the man who once told me that art without risk was decoration. I played the message again. Don't turn your back. His voice was tired, worn out, not angry, just disappointed. It hit harder than I expected. That night, I sat on the couch with Adam, the TV on but muted. He leaned into me, his fingers drawing lazy circles on the inside of my wrist. You okay? He asked. I wanted to lie. Say yes. Say it was just professional drama. But he looked at me like he already knew the truth. They're not mad because I'm not coming, I said finally. They're mad because I didn't fall in line. Because I'm not pretending it's fine that they excluded you. Adam stayed quiet. I added, it's not just about us. Not really. It's about how this place works. How they smile while closing the door behind you. He nodded slowly. People like me, he said, were never supposed to be in that room. That stung. Not because it was wrong, but because it was exactly what I'd been avoiding admitting to myself. He wasn't just my partner. He was proof that you could love differently, create differently, live differently, and they didn't want that energy near their perfect little goodbye. The conservatory hadn't changed. I had. The next day, a message came from someone unexpected. Jonah Clark, one of my old classmates, now a principal dancer in Seattle. Heard what happened. Just wanted to say, you're not the only one who's had to bite your tongue around them. Takes guts to walk away. Then another, from Mara Linwood, who'd once shared a flat with me in grad school. You didn't make this political. They did. You just told the truth out loud. I didn't respond to either right away. Just sat with it. I'd spent years trying to stay in the good graces of a place that only loved me when I fit their mold. And now, by standing still, I'd started a tremor. A quiet kind of revolution. One that whispered, maybe it's not us who need to change. The truth came from 3 time zones away. I hadn't spoken to Lucia Bennett in years. We trained together at Ellison, back when our knees were still forgiving and our dreams were bigger than our bank accounts. She left the States a while ago, now teaches choreography in Berlin. We kept in loose touch. A comment here, a birthday message there. But when I saw her name pop up in my inbox, I opened it fast. Just heard what happened. I'm sorry. I also think you deserve to know the real reason. My chest tightened as I read the rest. Lucia had been on a Zoom call 2 weeks earlier with another alum, now on the conservatory board. During small talk, someone mentioned the upcoming performance and how Ellison had to make a hard call. The hard call? A demand from a major donor. Someone with deep pockets and thin tolerance. A man named Charles Godwin, former patron, occasional lecturer, an Ellison devotee, also my old rival. We'd never gotten along. Back then, he thought my choreography was too theatrical. I thought his was afraid to be alive. But Charles had money, connections, and an ego that aged like spoiled wine. According to Lucia, he'd seen one of Adam's performances, the one where the orchestra wore blindfolds and the dancers screamed mid-pas de deux. He found it disturbing. He told the board, flat out, if Adam showed up at Ellison's retirement gala, his donations would stop. Full stop. The committee caved. Grace caved. Ellison caved. They'd made it sound like a stylistic concern, a matter of ambience. But it wasn't. It was about power, money, control. I sat there, staring at Lucia's message, the heat in my chest now a slow, sick burn. I thought back to Grace's careful words, her smiling tone. The way Ellison's voicemail sounded so clean, like nothing dirty had happened. But now I saw it clearly. They'd chosen comfort over courage, image over integrity, funding over fairness. That night, I told Adam everything. He listened, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he just nodded and said, makes sense. That's all. I asked. He gave a small, dry smile. People like me? We're always one step away from being erased. I'm used to it. I didn't know what to say to that. Then he added, but I'm not angry. I'm just tired. We sat in silence for a while. Then he turned to me. What are you going to do? I didn't have an answer. For so long, I believed Ellison was a place of honesty, of art and risk. But that was just the story they sold. Behind the curtain was politics, politeness, self-preservation. I finally replied, I think I needed to see this. I think maybe this is who they've always been. Adam reached for my hand, his fingers firm and steady. And for the first time since this began, I didn't feel betrayed. I felt free, not because I'd lost something, but because I'd stopped pretending I still had it. I didn't post anything. No cryptic tweet. No Instagram story. No passive-aggressive some of y'all message. I just went quiet. No response to the committee's final friendly reminder email. No return call to Ellison. No explanation. Just nothing. That silence said more than 1,000 words ever could. A few days later, I formally withdrew from the upcoming summer workshop I'd agreed to co-lead at the conservatory. It was a quick email. No drama. Just, please release my slot. Circumstances have changed. Adam followed suit. He pulled out of a commissioned collaboration that had ties to the school's music conservatory. The piece was half done, but he didn't flinch. Not building a bridge to somewhere I'm not allowed to stand, he said. We didn't announce it. We didn't need to. The arts world is small. Word spreads without anyone having to speak. First came the texts from confused former students. Hey, are you still doing the talk next month? Heard your name was dropped from the program. Everything okay? Grace said you were stepping back for personal reasons. I left them on read. Then came the ripple. A journalist friend, someone I'd danced with in a long-forgotten regional tour, emailed to say she'd noticed my name missing from the performance's press release. You were supposed to be center stage. Want to comment? I didn't, but I could feel it happening. The buzz was shifting. The performance that was supposed to be Ellison's triumphant goodbye had developed a shadow. Why wasn't Sean Adler attending? Was it a falling out? Creative differences? Politics? Speculation grew, and not all of it stayed behind closed doors. Someone leaked an internal rehearsal memo on a private arts forum, the kind dancers and composers used to trade gossip disguised as industry news. It included a line about maintaining thematic integrity and avoiding aesthetic disruption. That turned into its own thread. Over 100 comments. Some anonymous, some not. Then I started getting tagged in things. A young alum posted, "Wild how we're taught to be fearless on stage, but expected to stay silent off of it." A composer I didn't know tweeted, "Imagine being so scared of new ideas that you'd rather lose your alumni than hear something different." Ellison never responded publicly, but I heard, through a friend of a friend, that the event's final ticket push was stalling. Patrons were asking questions. People were uncomfortable. That was the irony. I hadn't tried to tear anything down. I hadn't raised a fist. I hadn't made a speech. I just said nothing. And somehow, that was louder than anything I'd ever choreographed. Adam said it best one night as we sat at the kitchen table, drinking tea out of mismatched mugs. You gave them a mirror, he said. They just weren't ready to see themselves. I didn't smile, but I felt something close to peace. The first real crack came from inside. It was an Instagram post, clean white background, black serif text over a faded image of the Ellison stage. Captioned, "I cannot, in good conscience, perform under a banner that demands silence in the face of exclusion. I will not be part of an event that shrinks the definition of belonging." It was signed, Isabel Ellison, the founder's daughter, also a principal instructor at the conservatory, also a lifelong ambassador for the brand her father built. Adam read the post aloud, slowly, as we sat at the kitchen table that morning. I blinked at the screen. "Holy hell," I whispered. She actually said it. Isabel and I had never been close. She was quieter than the others, even as a student, reserved, poised, sharp as a scalpel, always seemed more aligned with the system than ready to fight it. But apparently, something had shifted. Within hours, the post had been shared hundreds of times, first by students, then alumni, then a few respected names in the performance world who didn't usually weigh in on internal issues. Then came the trickle. A former soloist from the conservatory's touring company posted, "If tradition demands exclusion, maybe it's time to break tradition." One of the youngest guest choreographers withdrew, citing a disconnect between public messaging and private decision-making. Another dancer posted a selfie in front of the Ellison building with the caption, "We were told art was about truth. Where is it now?" Grace Lynn, the founder's protege, tried to control the narrative. She issued a carefully worded statement. "This performance has always been about legacy. We are saddened to see misinterpretations circulating and remain focused on honoring Maestro Ellison's vision." But the damage was done. Sponsors, the same ones who had been name-dropped for weeks, started pulling back. One issued a vague press release about reallocating funds to projects that align with values of inclusion and growth. Translation, they wanted out before the fallout got worse. The conservatory board scrambled. Word was they started calling defectors directly. Soft threats, guilt trips, invitations to clarify their stances. But no one budged. Then came the email I didn't expect from Ellison himself. Not a group message. Not filtered through Grace or the committee. Just a short email sent to me directly. "It's unraveling. I hope you're proud of yourself." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "I'm not proud. I'm just finally not ashamed." No reply. 2 days later, a revised program for the performance was circulated. It was stripped down, heavily edited. Over a third of the original performers had dropped out. The committee added a last-minute talkback session to promote healing and dialogue. They called it evolution, but everyone knew the truth. The illusion was broken. People saw the machinery now, the gears behind the curtain, the price of maintaining a spotless legacy. And it wasn't just about me, or Adam, or even this one event. It was about all the times someone was told to stay small, to blend in, to sit quietly at the edge of the stage while others danced center. But not anymore. Now the room was full of voices. And the silence? It belonged to them. He called just after 10. My phone lit up with Maestro Ellison still saved under that name from years ago. I stared at it for a second, thumb hovering. Then I picked up. "Sean," he said, and I immediately heard it. The weariness. Not the rehearsed theatrical tone he used at galas, or the clipped confidence he used in rehearsals. Just age. "Hi," I said, quiet. A pause. Then, I never wanted it to come to this. I leaned back on the couch, watching the steam rise from my untouched mug of tea. It didn't have to. He exhaled. Slow. We were trying to keep things clean, focused. The board, they were worried about distractions. They weren't worried about distractions, I said. They were worried about losing control. Another pause. "You think I didn't fight for you?" he said finally. "You think I just let this happen?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know what I believed anymore. "You were like a son to me," he continued. "Your choreography, it changed the entire tenor of our third season. I've defended you to that board for years. But not this time," I said. He was quiet again. I could picture him in his office, seated at that enormous mahogany desk, cluttered with old programs and vintage pencils he never used. I used to sit across from him as a student, hanging on his every word. That man had once taught me that movement could be a rebellion. Now here he was, asking me to keep the peace. "You made your point," he said, softer now. "People are angry. People are confused. But this isn't the way to fix it. What do you want from me?" I asked. "A gesture," he said. "Something to show we're still aligned. That this was just a misstep." Aligned. I repeated. He backpedaled. "I'm not saying you have to take the stage, but maybe an appearance. A short note. Something we can include in the program. A quote, perhaps. So people know you still support the institution." I felt something settle inside me, not anger, exactly, but clarity. "You're not asking for peace," I said. "You're asking for a reset, so things can go back to looking good." He didn't deny it. "Maestro," I said, quieter now. "Adam was never a threat. He was just inconvenient, and you didn't protect him. You didn't protect me." He let out a long breath. "This place, it's bigger than one moment." I shook my head. "Then you should be brave enough to own that moment." A beat passed. Then I said, "You want to start making this right? Apologize. Publicly. To Adam." That caught him off guard. "Sean." No deflection. No email sent quietly at midnight. No committee language. A real apology with his name on it. That's where we start. He didn't respond. Eventually, I ended the call myself. For once, I wasn't the one staying late to clean up someone else's mess. I was just telling the truth. The email came on a Tuesday. Subject line, board outreach. Request for meeting. It was formal, polite, a little too polished. But buried in all the curated language and gentle phrasing was the thing that mattered. They were inviting Adam to speak directly with them. We would welcome the opportunity to listen and learn. We acknowledge that harm may have been caused by recent decisions and wish to understand your perspective moving forward. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't silence. Adam read it twice, then slid the laptop toward me. "So," he said, tilting his head, "they finally found the courage to be uncomfortable." I smirked. "Kind of." He sat back in his chair, arms folded. "You think they mean it?" "No," I said. "But I think they're starting to understand what happens when people stop pretending." He nodded slowly. "Should I go?" "That's your call." He looked over at me. "Would you come with me?" I didn't even hesitate. "Absolutely." The meeting was set for Friday morning. Conservatory boardroom. Small group. Grace would be there, of course. 2 board members. A student liaison. And, surprisingly, Isabel Ellison. The night before, we barely spoke. We stayed close, though. Cooked together. Shared a bottle of red we'd been saving. And when I crawled into bed, I didn't feel tense. Just clear. This wasn't about reclaiming favor. It was about making sure they saw us, fully, finally, without edits. The next morning, as we stepped into the conservatory, I noticed something strange. No one avoided our eyes. They looked right at us. Some nodded. A few smiled. One student even whispered, "Thanks for speaking up." We didn't answer. We just kept walking. The boardroom was just as I remembered. Long table, leather chairs, soft lighting that somehow made everything feel colder. They were already waiting. Grace stood when we walked in. She tried to smile. "Thank you for being here." Adam nodded once and took his seat. I sat beside him, hands folded in my lap. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Isabel spoke. "We mishandled this. Badly." The words landed like a stone in a quiet lake. Adam didn't blink. "You didn't mishandle it. You made a choice. I just wasn't supposed to hear it out loud." Another pause. Grace cleared her throat. "We want to do better, but we understand that begins with listening." So we talked. Well, Adam talked about what it meant to be labeled disruptive just for existing, about how exclusion doesn't always come with a shout. Sometimes it whispers behind closed doors. About how art doesn't evolve by protecting the past, but by being brave enough to risk the future. No one interrupted. When it was over, there were no promises, no sudden grand gestures, just a quiet acknowledgement. This would take work. That was enough for now. Later that afternoon, we met up with Isabel again, this time off campus. Over coffee, she mentioned something that made my heart jump. We're starting something new. A collaborative residency. Independent from the board. Small. Honest. Real. She paused. We want you both involved. I looked at Adam. He was already smiling. As we walked home hand in hand, I realized this wasn't about vengeance. It wasn't about being right. It was about reclaiming space, making something better than what we left behind, and finally, defining the future on our own terms.